Our next panel will be talking to us today about our verifiable future. I'm pleased to be introducing John McCoy and Nick Dazé, I hope I said that right, who will be moderated by Jennifer Sanasie. John McCoy is an accomplished entrepreneur with over 15 years experience in global real estate markets. He was instrumental in the growth of various startups in the Middle East and Asia before focusing on empowering the Portuguese property market with the use of blockchain technology. John is hugely passionate about digital assets and their future role in the real estate sector, and he is focused on delivering real change in a true legacy industry. Nick Dazé is the co-founder and CEO of Heirloom, which builds no-code tools allowing schools and employers to tokenize credentials on the blockchain. Before co-founding Heirloom, Nick co-founded PocketList and was an early team member at tech companies such as Verifiable Future, Fullscreen, which was acquired by AT&T, and BitKitchen, which was acquired by Medium as Knowable. Jennifer Sanasie, our fearless moderator, sits at the intersection of crypto and culture. She co-hosts the Hash on CoinDesk TV, a daily news show that connects the dots on why crypto stories matter beyond crypto native communities. She's the marketing lead at Decent DAO, an on-chain venture studio that accelerates decentralization for existing institutions. And she's a contributor to Game 7, a DAO focused on defining Web3 gaming standards. She hopes to contribute to making the industry sustainable, equitable, and fair. Thank you. Prior to entering the Web3 space, Jennifer created branded and editorial content for companies, broadcasters, and publishers in Canada, South Africa, and the United States. So she sits on the steering committee of the MENA project, which is a program that assists students from racialized communities in setting and achieving goals for life after secondary school. The MENA project provides soft skills training, paid work experiences, and mentorship to minority students in the greater Toronto area. She's doing a lot of good for a lot of people. So gentlemen, you're in more than competent hands, and I'll hand things over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Shelley. What a wonderful introduction to all of us. Karim, I'm sorry I cut you off.
You did. I just wanted to make John's the guy in white, Nick's the guy in black. We messed up on a little bit of a login there with the names on the bottom of the screen, but I'll leave it in your competent hands, Jennifer. Pleasure to see you back. Pleasure to have you. We had Michael Casey on last night, and thankfully you're here today. I'll let you guys take it over. Apologies for running a little bit late. So help us catch up on time on the back end, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm just going to make sure I got it right. John is in white and Nick is in black, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
And I have a very interesting and popular name, and John can borrow it anytime he wants. Good to see you, John.
Our first challenge sorted. Well, Shelley did a wonderful job at introducing all of us. I'm going to give both of you a chance to introduce us to what you do today as it relates to our verifiable future. John, why don't you go first?
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Jennifer, and thanks, Link2, for having us today. I'm CEO and founder of ProprHome. What we've done is what we're doing right now is we're looking to revolutionize the real estate market with the help of XRP Ledger. We've taken a slightly different approach to some in this space in the past. We understand that the holy grail here is to do an end-to-end transaction, but we're looking at the broader picture and how we can use tokens to drive better practice in the industry. So we're tokenizing the reputation of players in the market, essentially.
And Nick?
Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Heirloom. The problem we set out to solve is a really big and intractable one. It's how do we establish identity in a kind of trustless way using these tools kind of built on top of blockchains. Our entry vector is in academic and professional credentials, right? What makes you, Jennifer, or you, John, distinct, unique, and valuable to your community, to your employer, et cetera? And how do we kind of pair you efficiently to economic opportunity? This is kind of an emergent property. Economic opportunity is an emergent property of all the unique things about you that make you you and make your brain important and valuable. And we think that's a fantastic application of blockchains as a technology.
Okay, that's awesome. I want to expand on that even more, given the name of our talk here is Our Verifiable Future. The last talk did a really good job at setting up this notion that the entire industry, tries to embody, I think, given the current circumstances, it's don't trust, verify. Nick, I'm going to start with you. How are you bringing that to life? Unpack your introduction a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of a contrarian in this space. I think our job here as humans isn't to eliminate trust or facilitate a completely trustless digital world. I think trust is really fundamental to how we operate and interact and transact as human beings. The problem has been, though, that there hasn't been a great mode of establishing trust and veracity in a digital context. So to kind of unpack that even a little bit further, I see it as a question of for any business or any person trying to transact in the world, what is your total addressable market? And in a pre-digital context, it was really your home market, right? Your national or state or even local community, people that would bank with you, people that would trust that you are who you say you are. And it was really only the big kind of multinational corporations that could transact globally and efficiently. And they extracted huge rents, so to speak. I don't mean that in a real estate context per se, but in kind of an economics context. And so then the internet came along, and now it blew wide open the total addressable market of businesses and individuals. But unfortunately, we did not have that strong sense of pre-digital identity and reputation and trust to fall back on. And so it opened this Pandora's box of fraud and scams, and the way we solved it initially was with things like federated identity, by handing over the keys of our trust to big banks, to big social networks, to big identity providers. And so we see these tools, these blockchain-based tools, as a way to finally kind of give us all the frictionless way to transact with one another in a way that doesn't obliterate trust, right? It kind of decentralizes the ability to establish trust and to establish identity. I may not need to know John McCoy's name to transact with him, but I need to know that he's an honest broker. I need to know that he has the resources he says he does, that he has the asset I want to purchase or the service that I want to pay for, and being able to facilitate those transactions easily is something that is surprisingly hard on the internet today. And I am an optimist when it comes to blockchain's ability to solve some of these problems.
John, let's expand on your introduction. How is Don't Trust, Verify being embodied at ProprHome?
Yeah, really nice topic. And just to follow on from what Nick said, I mean, it makes complete sense. But when we look at the real estate industry as a sector, it's super legacy, right? We can put it in the same category as insurance and mortgages, for instance. We really are dealing with processes and procedures that are 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago, even in relation to the internet, right? So it's an industry that's ripe for the use of this technology. However, as Nick said, the human-to-human interaction is hugely important to us as ProprHome. So what we've looked to do is to reward positive human interactions and then create an advertising model that is driven by the spend of these rewards. So essentially the most active, transparent, accountable, efficient professionals on our platform will be the ones with the most exposure based on their earnings of a reputational currency. So we're using it to drive better reputational practice.
I guess I'd like to unpack next when this trust actually started to erode. Both of you are building solutions for industries that have existed for a really, really long time. At some point, we trusted these industries and that trust started to erode. Nick, what has happened?
Excellent question. I think a few things. I think the internet in general, right? I think this is highly opinionated and subjective, but I think bad actors are, interestingly, some of the fastest movers into adopting new technologies, usually because of lack of regulation and kind of the slow pace of adoption and movement in the kind of legal and regulatory and law enforcement context. And so I think the internet, right, the 1990s, early 2000s, as the internet went from a niche thing to a kind of a universal technology that was used around the world. I think people, everyday consumers and human beings, businesses, saw the immediate value of being able to transact instantly and frictionlessly and generally for free. The early movers were a lot of fraudulent actors. I also think that the 2008 financial crisis certainly didn't help. You kind of expect, let's say, weirdos on the internet, right, to act. Certainly, you don't have the highest bar of conduct for the proverbial weirdos on the internet, but you certainly, I think, prior to 2008, have generally speaking around the world, a generally high level of esteem for banks that have been around for hundreds of years, government regulatory bodies that have done a decent job, at least since the Great Depression, of regulating these actors. And then that was, I think, the second blow. So if I were to try to put a timestamp on the kind of tipping point of the degradation of trust that we're still dealing with, I would say it's probably somewhere between 1998 and 2008. And we're still kind of picking up the pieces in the aftermath.
John, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, from my industry, and I don't know Nick's as well, but from mine, inherently it's set up the wrong way, right? You're dealing with probably the largest purchase you'll ever make in your life. You're instructing a real estate professional to work with you, who are typically paid commission only and are driven by sales, right? So their bread and butter, their end of the line is getting a sale done and getting commission across the line. So from a customer standpoint, from a transparency, efficiency and accountability perspective, we're not seeing the right draw, the right appeal for those professionals to do things the right way. So I think it's one of these situations where the industry has not moved as fast as the technology has. And since that timeline that Nick's just outlined, we've seen the birth of the interactive internet, right? We've seen the birth of something that brings a lot more engagement to each industry. So I think Nick's right. Somewhere in that line where we've seen an acceleration of technology, we haven't seen the same acceleration of processes and procedures in this industry.
You know, the last panel brought up the FTX contagion that we have to talk about if we're talking about trust and verification. I want to talk about your customers, right? Because you both operate in a section of the industry that technically shouldn't really be affected by what's gone on with FTX. But I want to talk about that mainstream narrative. So, Nick, how are your customers reacting to this news, and how are you dealing with that?
I'm excited to give this answer, but it's kind of a boring one, unfortunately. And that is, it's really not affecting us at all. We very deliberately staked out a kind of quiet and boring corner of Web3, at least relative to the cybernetic drafts that we all see out in Web3. And so it's really not impacting us much, and it's not impacting our customers much at all. Our customers today are name brand universities, right, that are issuing university degrees, club memberships, Latin honors, etc. on chain. And so it's an inherently non-financial use case of blockchains and related technologies. We get some questions sometimes. I certainly don't think the collapse of FTX helps the kind of PR of our industry very much. And I think founders and leaders and journalists, et cetera, in this space are going to need to do the hard work of kind of communicating, kind of overcorrecting or overcompensating on communicating the value that we all see to the rest of the world. And particularly when it comes to onboarding the next proverbial billion users, right? The kind of first billion users of Web3 are true believers, and they're going to stick around kind of, I don't want to say no matter what, but what has happened with FTX, I don't think is dislodging my belief in the power and potential of blockchains, cryptocurrencies, et cetera. But it certainly adds friction for people like John and me to go out to customers that are not part of the ecosystem and say, come in, the water's fine, the technology is fantastic, and we're building a better future. And now we have to do a lot of kind of hedging and explaining about some of these bad actors in the space. It's a bummer. I'm a Californian, so I can say it's a bummer.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was alluding to. You know, before this whole thing happened, there was a big education gap. I think a lot of us who are selling in the space, acquiring customers, we really needed to educate about what was happening. And it feels like that gap has gotten bigger, or maybe we've taken a few steps backwards. John, have you experienced that? Has your experience been much to the same as Nick's?
Yeah, I mean, look, as Nick said, it's not great PR for any of us, right? We're in the space. However, we both operate in that kind of boring sector that's not full of speculation, that's not full of hype. We're looking at real use case, right? Our focus here is to try and bring value, and I think the key word here is value, right? So when I'm sitting to pitch to customers, to partners, to partners, the key message is always, we can bring value in this space by doing X, Y, and Z. We can bring value, we can increase efficiency. Forget about the technology that's used, forget about the vehicle that is tokens, but the reality is we can bring verifiable value. So I think if we keep focusing on that, and proving true value, we should be okay. But look, it's not great for everybody, but we're getting through it, right?
Well, let's talk about the technology, right? We can choose any chain. There are so many blockchains out there, so many different ledgers to use. Both of you have chosen to work with XRPL. John, let's start with you. Why?
Really, really good question. And it was something that kept me up at night to make the decision, frankly. We spoke to various different chains, and we had a couple of chains, 3 or 4 chains, very, very interested in working with us. We did decide to go with XRPL in the end. There were a couple of reasons, and the obvious one is the RippleNet business, right? The cross-border payment settlement business that's there for so long, that's been so successful. This is huge for us in our industry. When we get to the Holy Grail, which isn't too far away, which is an end-to-end transaction, we want to be able to do this in XRP, right? Unfortunately, due to jurisdictional and regional differences, it's hard to roll that out on scale right now. But what we've done at ProprHome is we've put together the structure to be able to plug and play with jurisdictions as they grow. However, we see, sorry, excuse me, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, we chose XRPL because of the cross-border payment settlement payment business, but also because of the efficiency and price of transaction, right? The price of transaction is quite low. If we want to use it for driving better reputation, we're going to have more frequent transactions. So therefore, it was important for us to have the latency low and have the transaction cost low. And lastly, the security. The tech is quite simple with XRPL. It's not complicated, which allows for less points of vulnerability, which has been proven in the security record that XRPL have had over the last 10 years. So they're the 3 main reasons.
Nick, do you have any reasons outside of that?
No, I want to mirror that, right? It's if you want to build blockchain-based applications that consumers are using and they're not ripping their hair out because of 5-second latency on an API call or write on chain, transaction speed is a huge one. Low cost is another one, and then for our customers, carbon footprint is a big one. A lot of universities and a lot of employers have kind of environmental and social good motives, and the last thing they want to do is go to their customers, their communities, their kind of go to the world and say, look, we've adopted this great new technology, but we're burning the rainforest down. Whether that's true or not, right? The perception is very real, and being able to honestly say that it is one of the lowest carbon blockchains out there is a really great selling point to our customers.
Now, this is an objective conversation. So, John, have you had any challenges while working with the XRPL?
Challenges apart from the fluctuating markets. I mean, that's the challenge for every chain and every token, right? Very honestly, it's been super smooth. The only thing just the release of XLS20, we were waiting a couple of weeks for it to happen. But apart from that, it's been very easy to use. It's been very easy to integrate into our current stack. The support team at Ripple and XRPL have been absolutely excellent. Yeah, we honestly can't fault our experience today.
And my answer is not really a criticism so much as it's just a reality that we as a nimble small team can work faster than any company or platform the size of Ripple and the XRP ledger. So there are some things where we have kind of innovated ahead of Ripple and the XRP ledger, and we're working closely with the product and engineering teams there to adopt new technologies on chain, like decentralized identifiers as an on-chain primitive. We think that would be revolutionary. I'm not here to announce anything on their roadmap. That would be inappropriate and inaccurate, but that is, I think, the biggest biggest thing that if I had a magic wand, I would wave it and fix it. But again, it's just kind of more of a reality of inertia and physics rather than anyone's individual choice.
Nick, I appreciate you being appropriate and accurate. So thank you.
I try.
John, okay, so we've talked about all the benefits. It sounds all good that you've chosen your chain, you're operating. It sounds all good. But let's take a step back. When you are actually weighing the pros and cons and making that choice onto where we're going to build, what are we going to use? What are the things that you're weighing?
Yeah, we're looking at the roadmap, right? We're looking at Ripple and XRPL's roadmap. We're looking at the other companies and corporations in the ecosystem and where there can be partnerships. We're looking at PR, communications. How can we ride that wave as a small startup and build the momentum we need and we need to obtain to grow? So but for us, and I have to be very careful how I phrase this, for us, XRP and Ripple were very much an adult in the way that they behaved, and they were very structured, and it made sense to us. We felt like we were making progress on every conversation. We were getting somewhere, and as I said, the simplification of the tech made the choice very easy. The points of vulnerability are a fear when you're building tech in the blockchain space, and if you can limit those points of vulnerability by picking the right tech stack, then it makes sense.
Yeah, I co-sign that completely. I have nothing meaningful or different to add to that answer.
All right. Now I think we've unpacked how you chose where you're going to operate. Let's get back to that verifiable future. I want to talk about what this future looks like for you. So much in this industry, we envision the future. I think it's so important to acknowledge that we are still very much in a beta phase where we are testing and experimenting with a lot of the technology. John, talk to me about the roadmap that we've been talking about in the past questions. What does the future look like for you when it comes to verification?
Yeah, absolutely. Self-sovereign identity is a big conversation in the space at the moment, right? And I think the future for us all, I hope the future for us all is that we control our own identity, and that identity is cross-platform accepted, right? So there are a couple of large brands that we're speaking to right now that potentially will accept our tokens, our history, our data as verifiable, so that we can benefit from the reward schemes with their brands, with their ecosystem. So there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination opportunity in the future within companies, within businesses, and I hope that's where we're headed.
I really want to jump in here and add a couple kind of topical things, right? We've seen, I think, 3 fascinating trends or events or kind of ongoing events this year in technology that show why identity in general, but also kind of portable, composable, and decentralized identity is really critical. One, you've got the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. If you are fleeing a country, how do you establish your citizenship, your banking, your credit score, your credit history, et cetera, outside of the bounds of the geopolitical area that you kind of originated in? And that's an even bigger problem. That's a problem in general in the world, right? How many people have moved from one country to another and had trouble setting up a credit score, even if there isn't a geopolitical conflict occurring kind of where you come from? A second one is kind of verification by way of social networks, and I'm gonna name check Twitter and Elon Musk and the blue check debacle that's ongoing, right? How do you have social engagement and interaction online in a way where you know that your counterparty is who they say they are, that they are human and not a bot, right? And that they are not being manipulated or influenced or compromised by some other actor for some other kind of reasons or purposes that you may not be clear on. And then the third one is all this mayhem that we've all been paying attention to over the last week. It's astounding that it's launched 8 days ago to the public, but ChatGPT, right? We're entering a world where anything written online, the kind of net cost of adding 1 trillion, somewhat fluent, let's say 9th grade reading level kind of actors online, that cost is now effectively zero. And so for the purposes of transacting in a number of ways, attributing identity not only to human persons, but also to bots, is going to be really important. Kind of a thought experiment we were talking about on the team the other day was, if you went and watched a film and it was great, it was emotional, it was funny, you loved it, right? And that film was directed or edited or filmed by an AI, would you feel badly if you knew that it was an AI and you walked into that film knowing that it was an AI that edited or filmed that movie? Or would you feel badly if that was kept from you, if you were deceived in some way? I think this future that we're entering into, where the provenance of the mind, right, that is creating works of art, business works, etc., that transparency is going to be really, really fundamental and really interesting. And the total addressable market for identity is going to go from 8 billion to potentially 800 billion a lot more quickly than we expect, because we're kind of severing the one-to-one relationship between identity and flesh and bone human persons on the internet. And so I apologize for getting a little space agey, a little science fiction-y on you, but these are important things. And let's remind ourselves that Russia, Ukraine, the Twitter acquisition, and ChatGPT are all things that have happened not only this year, but in the last 10 months. And that these changes will accelerate. And I think establishing strong, composable, self-sovereign identity online using blockchains and blockchain-based technologies is going to be critical to us, even being able to make sense of the open market that we will all participate in the future.
All right. I know we have to wrap it up. There is one audience question, but I have 2 left. So I'm going to wrap them up into one question and we'll get to that audience question. John, we've just predicted the future. What are the challenges? And I'll let you answer this, from a broad perspective. What are the challenges? And if you want to touch on regulation, what are the regulatory challenges that the industry is going to face before we get there?
Yeah, great question. And it's not something that one person can answer. I think this is very much a work in progress, right? Legislation, jurisdictional legislation, managing the different geolocations of this legislation and how it's going to impact different markets is really, really tough. We're looking at a global market now. This is not something that we can just regulate on a European level or on a US level. I think we need some consistency. We need something that allows for growth, that allows for progress, that allows for innovation. But my fear, frankly, is that we're going to see hardline regulation before we see softline regulation. So reel everything in first to release things constructively. So the big one for us is obviously regulation and security. If we still see the Solanas of the world with continuous hacks on a quarterly basis, it really isn't helping any of us, right? It's going to create a huge amount of doubt in the industry. So I think security and regulation are the 2 biggest ones for me.
I will co-sign regulation. And from the context of what we're building, the question is effectively, who's allowed to tell the world who you are? For kind of all of history, or actually maybe not all of history, this is kind of a geologically recent problem. The first passports were issued sometime in the 16th or 17th centuries, right? So really for the last 500 years, sovereign nations have had kind of a monopoly on establishing who Jennifer is and who John is, and are they different from one another, and are they able to transact in a market? And that is being entirely called into question as the world becomes more and more digitally native. So kind of getting clarity on who has the right, the ability to tell the world who you are. Do you have that right? And by what mechanisms are you able to establish that outside of a sovereign state context is very, very interesting. There have been edge cases where we've kind of relinquished this kind of power or control in some light ways to parties like Google with your sign in with your Gmail account, right? Federated authentication. But there are much more serious, much more higher burden of proof transactions. With John, right, buying a house or transferring title to something, to a piece of real estate, establishing citizenship, et cetera. These are like really high stakes transactions that humans want to do, and they have, for all of recent history, been the purview of nation states, and that's starting to break. I think there are a lot of very interesting analogs to currency here. And so I think this is going to be a new kind of front in the technology wars of the 21st century. And my hope is that smart regulation is adopted rather than hardline, as John said, or no regulation. I think that doesn't really help us either. I know that's not a very popular thing to say sometimes, but the absence of regulation sometimes or often creates a lot of business uncertainty and keeps a lot of big actors and a lot of money on the sidelines until that regulation is figured out.
Karam, I see you popping up there. Are you kicking us off the stage?
I would like to say this is so fascinating, but you are helping me catch up with time. The one question for John on the side track was, will folks be able to use your platform for rental as well?
Yeah, thanks, Kareem. So we on the sell side support agents, property developers, and direct owners. So we will allow commercial or landlords work on the platform, and then on the buy side, we look after buyers and tenants. Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. I know you have a lot of questions, but we do, with your permission,
Of course,
have
no,
to wrap this up.
that's okay. It was a wonderful chat.
John, Nick, thank you so much for your participation. Love to see what you're doing. We did meet
Thank you,
John.
Jennifer.
I met John in Portugal a couple of years ago, then last year. It was wonderful and great to see how you developed and fulfilling your vision and using the technologies that exist for you to do that efficiently. Do look John up. The company is growing rapidly, as well as Nick's. There are interesting things that they're doing on a global scale, so something to pay attention to if you want to drop your connection on the chat so people can look you up and connect with you.
Great. Thanks a
pay
lot.
attention.
Thank
and
you
guys,
all.
Jennifer,
Thank you.
thank you all. And Jennifer, you need to connect with Jennifer. She's probably the most patient, calm, and professional moderator that I know, and I take lessons from her every day.
Thank you, Karam.
Jennifer, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.